So we're going to talk about counting collections today. And I'm going to be honest, I'm more nervous about this than getting married. Like, my wedding was a breeze. This is making me so nervous. Aww. All right, so what are counting collections? Counting collections are based off this book. It's called Choral Counting and Counting Collections by Megan Frank, Elam Kazmi, and Angela Chan Turow. You can find it on Amazon, and that's the cheapest place for it. But I know that you can find it on like Barnes & Noble and stuff like that. But it's a really good read. I'm going to be really honest. Everything I talk about today is already in this. But if you're really curious about 3rd through 5 or preschool, this would be a great reference. Or you can borrow it from me. That's fine. Yes. So the product that I use, so all the things that you're seeing and all the things I'm going to talk about was created by Research and Play, and she made this document, this resource from this book. She actually used this book in college when she was studying early childhood, and she just took pretty much exactly this and just made it like cutesy and explained how to do it in kindergarten. And when you look at it, it's just dead on. Like, it's exactly the little sheets that we're going to use and that I use. And I know some of you already use them. But she's a blogger. I refer to her as Holly. Holly's a blogger. She's a TBT author and an Instagrammer. Go find her on Instagram because she talks about how she uses Counting Collections a ton. Everything that I do, I just mimic Holly. I think she's great, and her counting collections are awesome. And she also has a bunch of posts on her blog. She's under Research and Play for everything. So the beginning quote in this book is, "Counting is fundamental to learning mathematics in elementary school. It supports the development of a deep understanding of numbers, providing the core foundation for understanding place value, how numbers are composed and decomposed, and how they are related to one another." Especially in kindergarten, our foundation is numbers. We want them to count. We want them to understand what they represent, what they mean, how they sequence, how they go forward, how they go back, and how we make them and take them apart. And Counting Collections does that. Anything that you want to teach in kindergarten, you can teach through Counting Collections. This is my not so humble brag, but you'll see on the next page. So this is my map data from last year. So in the fall, you all can read. It was a 133, and then in the spring it was a 163. My high was 1 in the fall, my high at the end was 5, and my high average was 3, and my high average was 9. Yay!
So that's our why. That's our why.
So good for you. So we know that there are so many other things that play into math. My kids are not like super wonderful because I'm a great teacher. They're super wonderful because they understand counting collections and they understand numbers. Teachers are great because of the resources that they use. I'm not claiming that my counting collections did this to my map scores, but I will tell you, my kids understood a lot more than in past years with counting collections. So, it was good, wasn't it? So, what can you do with collections? Obviously, counting. Counting sequence, one-to-one counting, cardinality, representing numbers as drawings. If you've been here before, a lot of us have used math drawings, not art drawings. Writing numbers and joining together addition, takeaway, subtraction, sorting, skip counting. And with representing numbers as drawings, in this book they talk a lot about how your kids have to understand how they counted, how they put them into groups, how they figured it out by skip counting, and how just drawing it makes sense and makes it more concrete. Because they can tell us they counted 12 and they can show us concrete. But something more abstract, like a drawing, can help them make connections as well. I called it join together and takeaway because those are what your sheets are. And mine are colors, so I'll show you. And this is a good segue into
Do you have any extra sheets?
Yes, they're up here. So mine are all fancy and colored, and I put them just into
Sheet protectors.
Thanks, guys. Paper protectors. And sometimes I put them together, like my join together and my takeaway are together because we're not going to work on those at the same time. And if we did, we could work on one side and flip it over, work on the other side. And then sorting, which is what my class is working on right now. And that's where we compare numbers. How are numbers the same? How are they different? How can we make them the same? How can we make them different? Things like that. So I've got some videos. Some of them are really great, and one of them I just throw in there because it's funny. So this is a little girl who had a hundreds chart last year. I'll show you. And I will say, I go find a different hundreds chart than the one that's in this packet. I gave it to you anyway just because it's in here. But I'll show you. It looks like this. And when you color it on color, or when you copy it on color paper, it gets really dark. And they get a little bit confused. They want to just do all the white rows and then do the dark rows. So I have found that the blank hundreds chart is a lot easier. I think this I just found when I Googled kindergarten hundreds chart. It'll just come up. I mean, we all have them. Use whatever you have, whatever your kids are familiar with. So this is normally my second activity, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it will make more sense if you see it now. And she was putting a collection onto a hundreds chart, and I asked her some extension questions. She's really excited. That's just how she is all the time. Ooh. Kayla will vouch for that. Oh.
I got 20. If I took 2 away, how many would you have? 18. How did you know? Because if you took 2 away, then you would have 18. How did you know that last cat was the one that you needed to look at? Because you can't see the number. Oh, and that means it's full? Yeah. Good job, cat.
So we always talk about the last number is the number that's full. And you could tell she was like, because it's covered. But we talk about how when it's not full, it's not, you can't count that. And they always want to say, like, if it stopped at 18, though, it's 19, because that's the next number they can see. But we talk about it's not there. There's nothing there. So it can't be 19 because 19 is not there. This was recent. This was actually on Friday, and this is where we're talking about sorting. So if you're ready to start, like while we're comparing numbers, this is a good one to start with.
Tell me about your groups. White spiders have 5, and the orange ones have 3, and the purple ones have 2, and the blue ones have 2. So tell me about your numbers. Compare them. Orange spiders have 4. And the blue ones have less. Yeah? Can you use the words greater than and less than? The 5 is so great. Then the what? That's 2 from the same and the blue ones are less. Yeah. Tell me about your purple and your orange. What are they? They'll eat.
So I always love this time of year because they're really excited about collections, and we haven't done them a ton because it's still the beginning of the year, and they all understand sorting. They all learned it from something else. They learned it from preschool. They learned it from the iPad. They learned it from Peppa Pig on TV. Sorting is a concept that they understand, and they really like it, especially right now we have spiders and cats. We'll look at my collections later, but yeah, he's really excited about the spiders, and they're equal. This one I threw in there because it's funny. Sometimes we do partner work, especially for join together and takeaway, because that's when you can have 2 groups coming together. But there are instances, she's an alpha and he is not so much, and so she spends the whole time talking and he just kind of agrees at the end. It's really quick. I thought it was funny.
I had 8.
She's like, yep. And normally I make them tell me, like, I had 10. We put it together and it was 18. This is a higher group, obviously. There were teen number adding. But, yeah, if I wasn't on video, I probably would have been like, you have to let him have a turn. But I was videoing, so he just, so making, organizing, and distributing. This is especially the setup for counting collections. Once you get it going, it's pretty easy. But in the beginning, it's super overwhelming. Like, what are we going to count? And how do I put them in the room? And where do I put them in? All that good stuff. So, what to use. My favorite thing, I love the erasers from Target. They come in, I think we've all seen them. They come in the little packs. And it's kind of hit or miss if you find them in the dollar spot. But this is my favorite thing to count. Famously, I call Jordan and Kayla if I find them at the dollar spot.
We call her.
And we call each other, and we're like, they have apples, and they have llamas, and they have pizzas. What do you want?
Someone calls me the day before her wedding and is like, okay, so I'm at Target. They have erasers.
They have witch
this is what
hats
you're
and
doing.
pumpkins.
Before the wedding.
And then I had to hide them in my car because Reed had sent me to go get, like, something for actually wedding. Oriental training's another good one. Target is hit or miss. I will tell you a behind the tip secret. Tuesdays are the days that they unload the dollar spot. I'm not opposed to asking the Target people what's in the box and waiting for them to take them out. I have lots and lots. But if you're lucky, if you go online to Target, they will have groups of them on sale, and they will be like 75 cents a bag. But they come in a pack. So if you go to Target, you have to go look at Bullseye's Playground, type in erasers, and it normally will be like a set. And I think it's whatever they had left over from people who didn't buy them. I don't know what Target they work at because there's never any left if they're at Lexington Target. Oriental training, though, always has erasers. And they always come in groups of just miscellaneous, which is awesome for sorting. I've got zoo, I've got bugs, I got all sorts of stuff. Other things to count: buttons, counting bears, Unifix cubes, crayons, colored pencils, seeds, beads, rocks, and pom-poms. Count whatever you have. Don't feel like you have to go out. My counting collection has grown over the years because I've been doing this for 3 years, so I've become addicted to the erasers. But when I started with counting bears, and I started with Unifix cubes, I started with crayon cups and just a pack of colored pencils because I didn't know the number 12 was on the front. Start with what you have, especially now, pumpkin seeds. That's what we're all learning about right now. Carve a pumpkin, take the seeds out, wash them, dry them, bring them in. Holly, who created this, she studied Reggio Emilio in school, as well as probably some of you. I know I did. And that talks a lot about using things that they're comfortable with and things in their environment. So she always talks about how they count rocks and how they count sticks and twigs, and they count shells because she lives like 5 minutes from the beach. Nobody's jealous, it's fine.
We used rocks all year. My idea was that I was just going to use rocks for a little bit, but they love them.
They love
and
that
they're
stuff.
cheap, and we just kept using them.
Yep. And they like things like that because their parents say, no, you can't take the rocks inside. Like that, they like this. They love this stuff. My kids are always obsessed with buttons. Like, obsessed. Everybody wants to count buttons. You'll hear in one of my other videos, the boy at the end goes, can I count the buttons? And I'm like, well, time is up, so no. But they're obsessed with counting buttons. Obsessed. Storing them. So I keep them in Ziploc baggies for the most part. And this is how I kept them my first couple years. I've been teaching over 3 years. So my first year of teaching counting collections, everything was in a baggie or it was in the box that it was already in. So if I was counting colored pencils, it was just in the colored pencil box. If we were counting Unifix cubes, I was just pulling it out and giving them a handful. It doesn't have to be down to a science. I will show you. I am super organized because that's where I've gotten with this, but you don't have to be. Like, you can literally be like, you're counting this today. Kayla, you're counting 3 today. But you can give them a handful and you can just, you know your kids. You can give them a small handful, you can give them a big handful, you can give them whatever you want to give them. It's your choice. You know your kids, but don't feel like you have to be super fancy. I upgraded my Ziploc baggies to the little Ziploc cups that I found at Kroger. I posted a picture onto my Facebook page and I had a parent send in cups and we used little cups and I stacked them. And Anna actually had my cups for a little while too. And then I upgraded, this is from Michael's. Holly uses this and I really wanted them because I use Collections every day. And if you see, I've connected my number to the inside and to the outside, so when they put them back, especially at the beginning of the year, they just have to match. And as we get further in the year and my higher kids, I can say, go get collection number 15 because I already know it's in collection 15, and they go find it, they pull it out, and then they put it back. This, Michaels has sales all the time if you're familiar with buying at Michaels. I bought mine on 50% off, so I bought 2 for the price of 1 because I was obsessed. So don't feel like you have to, but I do love how this is set up because it takes away another step for me. I can just say, go grab collection 7, they go get it, sit down, get right to work. Alright, how to start. So you can start whole group, and this is Holly's whole group lesson plan that she uses every year. And she put it in the little pack that I gave you all. She talks about what her standard is, what she uses, how to use it, her mini lesson, independent practice, extension, small group, share out. You could split this up to a whole week. But just like anything else, we want to teach them how to do it whole group and then break it into smaller pieces. A true I do, we do, you do. And when I start whole group, I always want to talk about how do we count things. And I straight up explicitly give them the rules. And I will show you my rules. And I give them practice time. And we share notice things, which we will talk about more. And practice time, it can be up to you. You can follow Holly's plan. I follow it a little bit. If we have time or I have enough material set up, which isn't always the way. You need to change your
before you leave today if you have not done this already. Again, they are doing this in Holly's office. So again,
I don't always have enough materials for us to do partners because I only have a certain amount of boards. And we always start out with the circle boards because they have to put it in a circle. They have to line it up, which is one of my very explicit rules. And then we share notice things. And I don't explicitly call them notice things, but I say, like, what do you notice? And I tell them what I notice after they tell me what they notice. And I give a lot of think time because a lot of times they're trying to grasp those vocabulary words that they're already getting from whole group or they're already getting from other things that we're working on. And when I teach counting collections, we're in a small group, but we are pretty much working one-on-one. So they are sometimes overwhelmed because a lot of our kids aren't getting one-on-one with us. So they're like, I have to think, I have to get the word that she wants from me. Like Callie's, the girl earlier, she's not going to get nervous about me being like waiting for her to say the word full, but they want to pull those words that they hear us use and the vocabulary that we talk about. So I give them a lot of time to share their noticings, and then when I share my noticings is when I say things like use the words greater than or less than, or I point out things that we've talked about in whole group, and then they're like, oh yeah. And I think in one of my videos later, I'll talk through it with you all, but one of my kids says, what is comparing? Or he says, like, I forgot what comparing means. I'm like, remember comparing how things are the same and different. And he's like, oh yeah, that's greater than this lesson and all that. But I really like to do a whole group. And then when we break into small group, that's when I start teaching my counting collections, that first small group after the whole group. It doesn't necessarily have to be like right from the bat, right from the get-go Monday morning. It's however you want to do it. Maybe you want to start on a Friday. How about it? So how to start. So these are my rules. And this is the same little girl. This is her same sheet, her same board. I kind of bounce between sheet and board. But my first rule is we never dump. If you dump it, you're going to lose them, A. And B, you're not going to know what you've already counted. Because if you dump it, you can count all over the place and not have touched 4 of the counters or whatever. And this little girl's a little bit higher because this is probably one of the first times we did it. And she has a pretty big collection, and she starts out with my blue boards. The green boards are what I start with. I'm just going to call them by colors. You guys can make them whatever colors you want. But my green boards are how I start because it reminds them that they can't dump. Because if you dump on this, it's not going to go in the right place. We want them to line up. And I didn't write it here, but one of my lineup rules is that your lines have to be a little bit separated, just like the lines in the book. Because if your lines are too close together, how do you know that you're not counting from the line underneath? Oddly enough, I've noticed kindergartners, especially at the beginning of the year, are very finicky about they want their collections to touch. Where hers are not touching and there's very obvious space between her lines, they want them to be like stacked, like 20 across, and then touching the next row under, and you can't count them. So I start them off with this, and this is where I share noticing, like, notice how they're separated just like words in a book, and we can see different spaces between them, so we know we already counted them and things like that. And then I gradually push them to the blue board. Another rule is we count out loud. Just like we read out loud in reading groups, we want them to hear them reading so we can hear their errors. We want to hear their counting errors. And we want them to whisper count, just like we want them to whisper read in reading groups. Because they will get confused, just like we do, if somebody else is counting next to them. So we always talk about, you have to whisper read. One of my friends in the later video, you'll see she's not whisper reading or whisper counting, so I remind her that we're whispering. Another rule is we touch count, because if you don't touch it, you don't know you've said it. You have to touch it, because some of them want to take my marker and just tap them, but there's a tactile piece to that. You want them to touch those counters, whatever they are. Line them up, I already said that. And I always remind them, it is okay to count again. They're very much perfectionists. They want to know when you ask them how many it is, they want to know immediately. But they've been waiting for maybe 15 seconds. They forgot they've counted 7 counters. So I always remind them, it's okay to count again, and it's okay to count again while you're still putting them out. What to do when they're done? My rule is they have waiting fingers. Nobody ever waits too long, because they may be waiting, and I looked over and they wrote 13 and the number is 8. So they're not waiting very long, because you can kind of bounce around. My other rule, Miss Tabor has to see it and tell you to erase, because they assume that I have seen it because I've glanced over it at them, that they can erase it and put their collection back. You've erased it and put it back, you have to do it again, because I didn't see it and we didn't talk about it. So the rule is you can't erase it and put it away. I've got to see you. And what do you want them to do next? Collections can be short, especially when you're just doing one-to-one counting. They can be pretty short, so you have to have a backup. What are they doing next? At the beginning of the year, a lot of times I let them just play with the collections, because they don't really have a ton of time left. And if you let them play now, they're not going to play with it later, and we all know that takes a lot of behaviors away. So I let them normally play with it, and they like to have their little spiders talk to each other, or their little cats or whatever. Right now we've been in collections for a little while, so they go to a hundreds chart for their second activity, and they can either count the collection they have, or they can turn it in and get a different one. With my higher groups, I will let them pick whatever collection they want, which tends to be the buttons, because I have a ton of buttons, so my buttons can go up to 80 or 90. My lower kids, I'm still telling them they have to pick from the top row, or sometimes I don't let them pick a new collection. They have to keep the one they have and just put it on the hundreds chart. Even if they've already counted, it's good for them to put it on the hundreds chart too, because they're making that connection between crossing the decade and how we count on a hundreds chart, and then when you use the hundreds chart later for extensions, it's going to make more sense to them. So you have to pick your sheet and your board for what you are working with. Obviously, right now we're working on sorting, and right now we're just using this one for sorting because they're familiar with it. There's another sorting one in there, and it's a little more open-ended because it says things at the top like, what are you sorting by? And they have to circle it, color, size, shape, things like that. But right now, since we're still kind of new with sorting with counting collections, we're just still sorting on this, where you saw with the little boy earlier, he just had them in lines. And then they will get, they don't have to use these. If you aren't super comfortable with these, or you want to start but you know that you can't get to the copier to put these on color copies, or you don't have enough sheet protectors, you have to wait until this weekend, whatever. We use number lines from the number case and the number cards from the number case. I have flashcards too that I use that has the number on top and the dots on the bottom. They are just putting their collection to match. Or I have a sheet, I didn't bring it down, where it's like a bunch of 5 frames and they just keep filling the 5 frames, or it's a bunch of 10 frames and they're just filling the 10 frames. I have one that's just a 5 frame, one that's just a 10 frame for the beginning of the year when we're working on those skills. You pick what you want to work on and what skill we're focusing on in math right now. But that being said, everyone does not need the same thing. Sometimes one of your kids might need a number line, or one of your kids needs the flashcards so that they are just matching. They don't have to do what everybody else is doing. They can still hit the standard while still having something else. We were working on, I want to say team numbers based on this picture. My other kids didn't need a number line. She did, so she has a number line. Do what you know that your kid needs, and talk to your special ed teacher about what you think would work well. One of my kids right now, she counts to 3 on here, and then we practice writing the number 3, and I write the number and she traces it. But then one of her goals is number ID, so she goes and matches numbers to cards. So all of your kids don't have to be doing the same thing. And there's not going to be a perfect separation of groups so that all of your kids are working on counting teen numbers. They're not all going to be working on counting teen numbers. You may have some kids working on teen numbers and some that are still counting 1 through 10. It's just going to depend on your group. And everyone does not need your attention for the whole time. You will know those kids in that group that will need your full attention that full time. These two are working on counting by 5s and grouping them by 5s. Obviously, they didn't need my full attention during the group. It is my high group, so they were all working on counting by 5s. But this is May. This is not the beginning of the year. Know who needs your attention, who needs your help touch counting, who needs your help with number sequence, who needs you to hover and listen to them count so that you can hear that they're going to say the number 13. Everybody does not need the full amount of attention, just like in reading groups with books. You will know who needs what. So I take a bucket load of data during collections, and that's how I make my collections. Like I said, yours doesn't need to be this fancy, but I know some of you have taught collections for a little while, so I'm just gonna show you how I separate them. So I have the box numbers that match my boxes. Let me pull this one out. And it tells me how many collections are in each box. So my box 1 has 3, 2 to 3 has 8, 4 to 10 has 13, 11 to 18 has 19, and 19 to 24 has 26. I have 2 of these. So I will look at what they counted the first couple times, and then I color coordinate it. This is really over the top. And the colors match my boxes. So when I get Kayla has a blue box, so Kayla needs to pick between 19 and 24. And I do give them a little bit of choice, so 19 through 24 could be like kittens and apples. So I'd be like, Kayla, do you want to count kittens or apples? And Kayla's going to be like, kittens! And so I would look over and I'd be like, okay, number 22 is kittens. Kayla, you can grab 22. Do you know what 22 looks like? And if she's counting one of the higher collections, she knows what 22 looks like. And I let them go get it, and then Kayla counted to 22, so I wrote 22 with a plus mark. So next time I know she gets to have a bigger collection. And however it goes. Yours doesn't have to be this complicated, but when I started, I still did write what we could count to independently. And I would write a minus if they couldn't, or a plus if they could. However you normally do your writings or markings or check marks to yourself, however you want to do it. And sometimes I write notes. So my note, this friend counted it successfully on a 100 chart. So however you want to do it. But when you get to things like sorting, you can break it down. I have it split between 2 different skills. So this one is number writing and comparing. So this friend could write the number but needed prompting to compare. This friend could write and couldn't compare. So next time I'm going to give him a bigger collection to compare where the numbers are different, and then I know to extend it. So I would, and one of the girls that's coming up in a video, it's kind of hard to hear her, but I said, how would you make those numbers the same? And she had to figure out how to make the numbers the same because one of them was greater than, one was less than, things like that. And I wrote for her an E, so she had an extension. So I'm just going to have to continue to extend with her.
Can I see that so I can
Yes,
hide
their
the
names
names
on
yeah.
it. Here, you want me to?
I'm trying to add this video a little pizzazz. Like, I'm doing some pretty cool things.
This fancy camera work.
I might quit my job and become a videographer.
There's that.
Or you'll be very dizzy if I watch it.
But when you start collections, use data that you already have. I mean, don't reinvent the wheel. You know your kids. Your kids are already separated by group. Don't feel super overwhelmed because counting collections at the beginning can feel super overwhelming. You just have to take it step at a time. You don't have to have them split up. You don't have to have them color coordinated. You don't have to even know what you're going to give your kids to count. I would just give them handfuls in the beginning and be like, let's see what you can do. Like, have at it. Don't feel like you have to do data at the same time either. It's hard to get into the swing of giving your kids each time and listening to them count and doing that thing. Take your time. Counting collections is a lot, but if you do it, I promise you it's going to come back because my kids understand numbers like beyond what I could ever compare. I have 2 videos to show you what it looks like, but I am going to say with that, so this is one of the extensions. It says keep on counting, and we use this a lot starting probably pretty soon with some of my groups. It's really confusing in the beginning, but my kids understand numbers and how they relate to each other because of counting collections, and I mean that wholeheartedly. I've drank the Kool-Aid, and I hope you do too. It tastes good over here, but like, I'm serious. It's so good. Okay, so this is probably early spring last year, we were working on subtracting, which they were already a little bit familiar with. And I'm going to be fully honest, this is before we taught subtraction whole group. These kids understood how numbers compose and decompose, so I wanted them to do it independently. It's not super long, and I'll pull it up full.
Just took away all the animals that were the same. Remember, here, let's do it together. So let's count them out. And there's 10. I want you to count them. Why don't I have to count them?
I did dump, and I do tell them don't dump like me.
Yeah, so whoever's having there.
And I always tell them I know what's in them, so I can dump.
Different ages. So at first I had
And this is the
10. I
takeaway.
took away 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, so that's over. Alright. We're gonna do it, and I want to see it. And then I'll give you a different collection to count on your 100 chart. Did I got good?
Normally my little box is a little further away from me, but where we were videotaping, I didn't want them to keep having to get up. And I normally just say, go get blah blah, but this time I'm just like, here you go, here you go, here you go. So, but they all have the same number. They all have 10. So
So this is during your small group math
this is
time.
during my small group math time. And I always remind them we're counting in straight lines. And I make my notes about, I think I'm just writing the date. And they're pretty independent at this point, and this is one of my higher groups, so I don't have to be on top of them the whole time. And my ultimate goal, I haven't gotten there yet, is for them to be fully independent with counting collections, and they will record themselves doing it. But we're not there yet. But this group definitely was close. And like, they all don't need me right now, but that little boy did. He was writing the wrong number, so I had him count again. Well, the little girl next to him realized that she was counting the wrong number too, because at this point they'd figured out they all had the same number.
There you go. 10. At first I had
I'm gonna speed a little. So this little girl had finished. Her and I had talked about it, so she had 100 chart and a new collection.
That's her cat.
And I'm letting her pick pets or cats.
Gabby, Richard, read it. Make sure they get it.
So when we do it, I have them read it to me. At first I took away, and now I have. It does drive me crazy that these are backwards, but we just make it work. Because you're reading backwards, but they figure it out.
Alright. Let's talk about yours. Wait, let's
It's super weird.
Yeah. Alright. First I had.
Oh, wow.
I want her to fix it for me, but
Now let's
Holly and I aren't tight like that, so.
So now you have. There you go.
So they're all doing something. Nobody's just sitting. I switch out their collection. I give them a new one. They talk to me. They tell me what their number is. I make them switch their number. Whatever. They're always doing something. And that takes a lot of practice.
Take away a different number this time. How about you
So is it that she was struggling and so
Yes.
you're having her do it again?
So I'm having her take away a different number. And sometimes where they're, like, for instance, these are pets. So I'd be like, this time you take away fish. So that time she's taking away something specific. So I already know what it's going to be.
At first I took away. How many buddies do you have?
So we are correcting her number. And I'm more than likely going to have her do it again. But I say that, and I'm probably going to give her a hundreds chart.
Alright. You took away 2. How many would you have?
So I asked her if she took away, how many would she have on her hundreds chart.
Ooh. If I gave you 2 more, how many would you have? Mikey, sit up. 20. Are you 2 more? How many would you have? 2 more. 1, 2. Now you have. Good. Where'd you take away? There you go. Come here. Alright, up here. Alright, I took away 3. How many would you have? You can take them off the board if you need to.
They're very, like in the beginning with hundreds chart, they don't want to take them off. But I teach them if they take it off, then they can see what it is. So she ended up accidentally grabbing a number from, or a counter from another one. So her numbers were all off. So we had to fix it. And then she had to do it again. She probably was like, she's driving me crazy. So this little girl and that little girl are now sorting their collections just on the carpet because they were so quick.
Do you always do the hundreds chart second?
Yes. Almost always, like 9.9 times out of 10.
I gave you 2 more. How many did you have?
So we had some speech going on there too.
Alright, read it to me. Good stuff, friend. At first, I took away. And now I have. Good, yes, you play with those. Alright.
So I let her play because I felt like I had put her through enough, making her do it over and over again, and she knew she was getting videotaped. And I think that added to her like.
Chick-fil-A. How many is Chick-fil-A?
Kayla and Jordan know these friends, so
Like, how many did you take away? Okay, now you have. Alright. How about let's practice our 10? So I want you to put this. Here, you can play. We're
So I looked at the timer that was behind me and saw we probably had 30 seconds because I was gonna give her a hundreds chart. So my timer, you can't hear it, it's going off in the background. So we're just cleaning up and putting them back as I go. But yeah, different. So this is last Friday. I was trying to find something super early beginning of the year, and I realized don't have anything from the years past because I don't normally videotape this early in the year because the thought of them being videotaped, they like lose all self-control of their bodies and they lose all understanding of numbers. But I do a lot of videotaping, so my kids are pretty familiar with it by that time of the year. So this is my first time videotaping with this class. There's a friend in this group who is being a little bit pushing the limits in front of the camera, so you'll see that. And a little friend who just becomes frazzled at the camera, so he takes the whole entire time to get his done. But it's good to see what we're working on right now, so you can see a different way that we do it.
It's also good for them to see reality. Like, I think it's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you watch these videos and you're like,
I do ugly eyes another kid in the room, so
ooh, nice.
there's a lot of good stuff in this video.
So, for collections today, you're going to do two different things. I'm going to give you a collection, and you're going to sort by color.
Oh, and I do collections on the carpet, and you don't have to, but I like my kids to spread out and lay down and whatever because I want them to feel comfortable. And they like love laying on their bellies, and I'm like, okay. So.
Okay, and when you're done, what do? You shout, I'm done. What should you do? Waving fingers, okay?
She knows there's buttons. She's just gonna ask every question under the sun just now.
Abby, go get 11. Drake, get 8. Sam, 9.
And I get my hundreds chart out ready, and then my markers for them to write their numbers. I also realized that I haven't started my timer, so I have to go start it too.
However you want to do it. You just have to be able to count.
So I told her she just had to sort them into groups however she wanted. She just had to be able to count them. So she just had to be able to spread her groups out to see them, because we were still using the blue sheet for these sortings.
I know that they're different groups. Well, I hear Sam doing some fight.
I've also learned in videotaping myself, my resting face looks really bored and really annoyed. I have resting annoyed face.
Hey, look at me. Stop.
Yes. I'm doing the like, please don't make me yell at you in the video camera.
We're counting just the color. So how many is the group?
I pretty much never talk to the little girl in the boat. She has a very large collection to sort. She does not need pretty much anything from me. I'll talk to her when she's done, but she doesn't need me on her the whole time. My other friends need a little more attention. And I reminded him he can count again.
Ooh, there's the eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't worry, one of my friends purposely steps on another one's collection during this video. Milking it for all it's got.
If you need help writing your number, the numbers are on the bottom.
And I always, yeah, the numbers are on the bottom and they're so good for helping them remember how to write them.
Your numbers are on the bottom.
Or if they can't remember like what a 13 looks like at all, they can count until they find it, circle it, write it.
You're not doing your center. fix it. No, that's not a choice. You need to fix it.
It's a good video to show you all.
But it's good for them to see reality, though.
While you do collections.
One of the worst things are when you see a video and you're like, I could never do that. My kids never are that. So they're
Oh.
seeing right now
You
that
can
you
do
can
it.
do it and have multiple things going on.
Yes, you can. I originally videotaped the group before this, and it was a bigger mess, if you can even imagine. It's hard to hear him because he's talking so quiet, but I do have to help him.
Are they sorting erasers? Okay.
Yes, they've got the little spider. They're different colored spiders.
One has
So this group gets to pick their bigger collection, but I wasn't so sure about letting them pick while on video, so I just let him have it. But you'll see, I let some of the other kids go pick their collection, and they're higher, so they just pick whatever they want.
like, what about that one? How are they different? So 2 is what? 2 is more?
We were on video, so we got to say whatever we wanted to say, so we were being a little silly, but she knows 2 is less than 5. But it's good to have those conversations when they do make mistakes like that, correcting their misconceptions and their errors. So I moved it closer because I knew she was going to talk quiet, but I knew she had good stuff to say.
So tell me about that. What does that mean?
And I hope your filming is better than this.
9 is greater than what? And? Good. Can you tell me, I'm going to ask you a really tricky question. Are you ready?
Oh, there she goes. There.
What could we do to make your black cats and your purple cats equal?
So purple had 6, black had 4. So I asked her how could she make them equal. And I just left it at that. So she's thinking about it. And this is where you give them that time.
How many 2, and then what did you make? 4 and
I've got to go, but thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I love it. Thank you.
so now they're what? Stop. Alright, you make it. You can put your collection on a chart, or you can put it in.
So we were running out of time. So I just gave her 100 starts to start on. 'Cause they don't have to finish 100 start.
Green spiders and 3.
How long do you run your groups for? So they're about 10 minutes. But the timer just went off and there's about like a minute left in the video. So they have to finish their first part. Like I will keep going until everybody's finished their first part. They don't all have to get to the 100 start, but I want them to finish that first part because I want to have those individual conversations about their numbers and their vocabulary and their noticings and all that.
What does that mean what they're the same?
Do they write the total number down here for the sorting instead of?
Not sorting. So for sorting, they would do like 2. They would write 2, 3, 5,
This is a tricky
1.
question.
Like they would write it next to, yeah.
Okay.
And I do have one little girl. She loves to draw.
Groups with the least, right?
She'll figure out what her groups are gonna be. So she would figure out like one's gonna be green, one's gonna be black, and sort them in circles. And then she'll write the number next to the circle. Like she just likes the circles, which is fine. I know she's not gonna make a mistake. If one of my lower friends wanted to put them in circles, I would be like, absolutely not. Like we always count lines. But she likes to sort in circles, and I'm not here to crush dreams. So if she would like to count in circles and she's gonna be successful in it, then she can count in circles.
So you teach them from the very beginning though to do it in a line.
Yes. Yep. And that's why I really liked my green sheet with the circles, because it makes them put it in line. They will try to go up and down or put 3 here, 2 here, 1 here, but I tell them like we go across. Yep. So that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions about just anything in general? Maybe, okay, counting collections? Counting collections.
Do you like use this during tier 2 for your math?
I have. Yeah, I have. Like, I have a number sequencing group, and I gave them number lines today and a collection, and I knew what number was in there. So they had to count.
It'd be like something really easy to.
Yeah, this would be awesome
pull
during
out.
tier 2. Yeah, and it's a great, just like, oh, you know what we could use today to work on that? Like, we'll just pull that up. Yeah, it's really great. Yes.
What are your average, like, are most of them, like, do you have, in the containers, I guess, you have them all the way to like 100? I mean, not right now, but like, how do you
So,
choose what goes in it? Or
I
organize
use it based on my data, so I will look at my data sheet, and if like I have a group that can count, I'm just gonna get real personal with this video. So if I had a group that I could see was stuck counting like in the teens, then I would make a group that was like low teens, and we would just practice counting like to that. If I saw there was a group that every single time I gave them above like 22, then I'm gonna bump it up to like 28. Like, we're not gonna go crazy and cross the decade yet, but I just build each time.
So you
yeah.
change that often?
Often, very often, yeah. And it doesn't take too long. And what I have also learned, let your kids help you. Like, when I know I'm done with that group, and I probably switch them twice a week. You don't have to do it that often. I'll be like, Kayla, go put all the spiders into this bag. And then she knows, she'll be like, oh, there's spiders, and they just dump them, and then at least they're empty for me to just put them in. I also had a high kid who loved during tier 2, I would tell her, I'd give her the boxes, she would sit next to me, and I'd give her like 5, 6, 7, 8, and I would tell her each box needs 15, and she would put 15 in each box. It just depends. I mean, you don't have to do it 100% yourself. Holly talks about a lot that they need to be in charge of their environment, and when you give them jobs to clean up, like, they'll do it. If you teach them, that is. So, let them put them away for you, because then you don't have to do it. Because counting collections are enough thought process for you anyway. Let them take care of that.
How do you know how many are in 12 and 6?
So I write down, so 12 currently has 19, because my boxes 11 to 18 have 19 in them. And so when I give them a box, I'll be like, what? Like, they'll tell me, like, I have 14, and I'm like, count again, because I can see box 9 has 13 in it. And if they count again and it's 14 again, I'll be like, okay, let's count together. So then they have to touch count, and then I either notice an error with them, or they've accidentally picked up somebody else's, which happens. And then I'll be like, I love how you counted. I was wrong. And they love it. They're like, she was wrong. I was right. So, I mean, it helps to know, because it makes it go quicker, but you don't have to by any means.
So if you have like a low group, say I have one that can only count to 3, but
Yep.
the rest of them are going to like 12. You can still have them in the same
Yep.
group, but you'll have like a certain box set.
So
for
my
each
box,
child.
my number 1 box has 3 cats in
Okay.
it, and my one friend counts 3 cats. And I normally give her like a card and it has a 3. I could not for the life of me find it. But it's got the number 3 on it and then 3 dots, and she just puts the 3 cats on. And sometimes I'll be like, okay, you want to put it on a sheet? How many? And it's still 3, even if you switch it over here. And then we can practice her writing the number 3. But I only have one box that's 3. My next 2 and 3 are 8. So I mean, there's a jump there. But you have to know like what you need, what your kids need. That's like when I started giving in the beginning, when I started collections, and I was just giving them handfuls. Like some people got a teeny little handful, and some people got like a handful. And my collections past 24, I have like, what's double 16? 32. I have 32. So all of my collections past 24 are just a number that I randomly handfulled, and they're big collections. They can go all the way up to 120 based on what my kids need. So don't feel like you have to stay like, if your kids can count to 100 but they can't count past 100, those higher kids later in the year, give them a 120 chart and let them count with those bigger collections. Because then they start to notice like, oh, my numbers just start over. Like, it's not 100, 200, 300, 400. Because a lot of our kids are like 100, 200, 300, 400. And counting collections are great for those high kids too. Especially these, keep counting. Just keep counting. Because these will, like, even your highest kids, the first time you do it is going to totally trip them up. Because they're like, skip count 5 more, like 5 more, like she's only ever asked me what's 2 more or 3 more or whatever. So
do you do that kind of whole group in your small group the very first time you do that hard collection? Okay, model it.
Yeah. I model a lot. Like they watch me do a green page collection, they watch me do a 10 or a blue page, and they watch me do 100. But they normally watch me do 100 in a small group because not all of my groups are even close. Even if they're putting 13 on 100 chart, they don't need a 100 chart in their hand yet. Like, we're gonna get there, but we're not there yet. Hopefully by November, which, wow, that's around the corner. But we'll start with even those low groups will get a 100 chart. Because they'll rise to the occasion. And if anything, counting collections has taught me your kids can do it if you teach them to. They really and truly can.
If you guys are interested and you would like to see, could they come and observe you? So when do you do it?
So like 10:45 would be a really good time.
So if you're
Or
like, I teach during
11.
that time and you let me know, I could probably for 20 minutes watch your class. You just have to email me and
Yeah.
I have to figure it out. But I'd be happy to do that because I like to hear it and then I like to see it.
Yeah, me too.
So the idea is that you guys really use this PD in your classroom. So if that helps you, let me know.
And I didn't want to overwhelm you with 10-minute videos.
No, this is great.
So,
I thought it was really good.
anything else? Jordan, Kayla, Rachel, you all teach counting collections. Anything you want to add?
Kids love them.
My kids love them.
My kids love the erasers because like they're all so different. Like I'll hand a collection to Cal and be like, you get to count tacos today, and
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm like,
that's fun. I really like that.
tacos.
Yes.
And then like I always try to give like the unicorns to the girly girls and
Oh yeah, they
all
eat
that
that
stuff.
crap
So
up,
like
yeah.
you can really, like they are more interested when they're counting something that they really like.
Yes. And when I say, like, I'll be like, today's a new collection day, they're like, oh my gosh! And they'll be like, tell me what's in it! And I'm like, nope, it's just a surprise.
Yeah.
My kids just got rocks last year.
But my kids love
You get some
I got a rock.
But they were excited about rocks all year.
Unicorns, what'd you get?
Rocks.
My kids, like, they love to count the spiders and the kitty cats and the cupcakes and the heart-shaped pizza. And then they're like, but I want to count buttons. And I'm like, okay, you can count buttons. I'm glad I spent all this money on apples, but buttons it is.
All right. All done? All right. I'm going to stop it.
Thank you.